Near America's 250th birthday, we are looking back at South Carolina's history. Former Senator and current Mayor of Camden, Vincent Shaheen's new book takes us inside the State House and the politics that shaped our state. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now,
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now, we know that your book is coming out mid-December.
Yes.
But when people pick it up, talk about what they can expect.
Yeah, well, it really tells the story of how South Carolina's government operates today. There's not a good book that talks about that, but it also traces back in history all the way back to the founding of South Carolina as a colony and before, a little bit about the Native American history, and lets us understand why our government today works like it does, looking back at its history.
Talk about what surprised you the most when writing, researching for your book.
I think what surprised me most was how much our government's changed over that 200 years. When we look at the federal government, you know, we've had a president, a Congress, and a Supreme Court, and they've changed, but not that much. But in South Carolina, there's been dramatic change. For example, the governor used to be elected by the legislature. Then the governor only could serve 2 years, and now we have a governor that can serve 4 years, 2 terms. So a lot of change in the state that we've seen over government during that time.
One chapter out of your book, talk about it. Why should people read it? If you were to, maybe pick a chapter out of your book, one chapter, what would it be and why?
Well, I hope they read the first because it really talks about the history of the state, how we were founded, why we were founded, how we revolted against England, and how that led us to really hate consolidated power in this state. Also, I think it is important to trace back what happened during the Civil War and Reconstruction. I talk about that in that chapter and why we still today have effects from that period of our time.
How do you see the future of South Carolina working when we talk about government?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about. Are we going to become more and more like the federal government? That's been the trend lately. Or will we do what the country was designed to do, which was to have our own unique system of government in this state, just like the other states do? I think we've seen that argument a lot over the last 20, 30, or 40 years. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Also, I think political polarization and partisanship is an important concept nationally, but also here in South Carolina, and what will we become like Washington, D.C.?
And then talk about, South Carolina's history and how it has really shaped how government operates today.
Well, it really has. For example, during the Reconstruction era, we had leadership right after the Civil War in the state that was led by African Americans and also Northerners who had moved here, and they created, for example, a focus on public education that had not existed before. Yet that continues even today. So when you look back in history and you say, why do we do what we do? Why do we have a education secretary here, a superintendent of education? The roots are traced back to these historical periods. I find that fascinating, and I think it'll be very interesting to the reader to understand why we have a government we have. I'd also say most people don't know about state government. Most of our media coverage is about the national government. This is an attempt to let people understand how the government that affects them the most is run.
And then talk about, is there a story maybe that you can share with us, a behind-the-scenes story that will maybe connect viewers with your time at the State House and also in politics?
Right, so I taught at USC a class on government, but I was also in the legislature for 20 years. And I remember well a period of time where our Senate and our House got in a fight with the governor. Governor Haley tried to call back in the General Assembly for an emergency session. Glenn McConnell, who was the leader of the Senate, said, no, you can't do that under the terms you've said. That case went to the Supreme Court. So you had all 3 branches of government, the General Assembly, the legislative branch, the governor, the executive branch, and the Supreme Court of South Carolina chiming in. I saw that firsthand, and really it showed me that government can work when there is a balance, when the branches actually don't all agree all the time, don't disagree all the time, but have a healthy rivalry.
Wrap it up here. Talk about where people can get your book when it is released and just how they can order it. Pre-order it, actually.
Yeah, so it can be pre-ordered at USC Press. If you just type in USC, Press, and go to their website, you can pre-order the book. It'll be coming out in December, and it's really geared toward people who are interested in government, interested in politics, also people who maybe want to run for office. Would be a great primer from them to understand. And then, of course, teachers, professors, people who want to be able to convey knowledge about how South Carolina and its government works. I think it'll be fun. And it's not just a boring book about government. There's also some fun historical vignettes about people like Robert Smalls, who escaped during the Civil War from enslavement and ended up becoming a hero for the Union, and then came back here and was one of the first elected African Americans to Congress in America. So they're great stories throughout the book.
Absolutely. Vincent Shaheen, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
this
you.
morning. And we look forward to reading your book, getting a copy here. And of course, all this information will be available on our website, WISTV.com. Stay with us. More Sunrise after the break.